Hello and welcome to the Meeple Minded. My name is Jason and today we're building skyscrapers as we check out Tower Up. In Tower Up, players assume the role of architects and your architectural firm has been selected to renovate the city's downtown districts. But you are not the only ones. Your opponents are also renovating the city, and it is therefore very important for you to manage your building resources and carefully plan your constructions to be declared the superior architectural firm and thus win all future contracts. Tower Up is a game from Monolith, and as a game coming from Monolith, the company behind massive productions such as Batman, Gotham City Chronicles and Conan, you might be expecting 40,000 miniatures in this box. But that's just not the case with Tower Up. So, truth be told, the production side of Tower Up is probably the tiniest bit OTT, but I'm not actually sure where I would cut back because, frankly, the production really does add to the game, let alone giving it a great 3D table presence. The building pieces that are used within the game are made of a fairly lightweight plastic, but they clip together very nicely and don't feel particularly cheap, with the different colour plastics used to signify the different building types, while the individual player roof pieces are made in a much brighter coloration to make them stand out for the end game scoring. The player boards are dual layer and house the small plastic construction vehicles, which are also very nicely cut, I must say. They just sit nicely on their designated tracks with an easy movement to move them up and down. The best part for me though comes with the box storage included in the game, as that doubles as a very nice table organizer and makes setup literally less than a minute. Gameplay side of Tower Up is very lightweight in the terms of ease of play and rules to learn. After all, it's only one action with a choice of just two things that you can do. Build by placing down a new construction in a free plot and paying the required costs to the surrounding buildings, or gain resources by claiming one of the 3 cards on display. All very simple and easy to execute, but don't be put off. The game is surprisingly thinky, as you have to try and maximise points from having your roofs still showing at the end of the game while still trying to move up your various construction tracks, while also trying to make sure you have the correct resources to continue your construction empire before your opponent throws a spanner in your works by building right where you wanted to, forcing you to change your plan at the drop of a hard hat. Yes, I really did make that bad joke. So guys, it is just a few minutes into this video and it's time to summarise already, and I'm amazed at how quickly we got to this level, but I'm sure we'll talk as to why that might be in just a second. Tower Up was a game that I picked up attending Spiel at Essen last October, and I must admit I don't regret the decision to do so. My partner's expressed that she really likes this game and that it should never leave the collection for fear of death. Not quite sure she'd go that far, but it is a pretty good game. The game has been great and fun to play, and to be honest it's been fun to teach as well, because almost every player I have played this with has had a great fun time. I did quite clearly say almost though. And that's because a couple of the more experienced players that I have shown the game to that were familiar with Monolith's other games were a little disheartened at the much lighter weight game that is Tower Up. And I did pre-warn them of that fact, so I'm not really sure who's to blame there, but I guess name does bring certain expectations, I guess. Me, however, I enjoy having a selection of lighter weight games in the collection that work nicely with less experienced players, or a game that can be played after a heavier game to round off the night, or even maybe the start of the night to build up to that main event. And that is where I would say that Tower Up is suited best. It's never going to be your main event of the evening, but the production quality is pretty good overall. As I mentioned just a little earlier, it is maybe a tiny bit OTT. Maybe you don't need all those 3D buildings, but it really does make the game. And to be honest, I like the fact that the game evolves throughout the game as players build and try and achieve those public objectives at the same time. Which I also want to give a shout out to, because the public objectives are not too hard to complete, and I didn't really feel I had to go out of my way in order to achieve them. There is also a decent supply of them within the game, so you won't always be seeing the same objectives over and over. I'd probably say the starter objectives are ridiculously easy to achieve, so once you've played your first game, I'd probably avoid using those ones. And also, to do with the public objectives, something I really did like was the fact that every player can achieve them, and that the only benefit you really get to achieving it first is you get slightly more points, but it's not a big enough points gap that you sort of could have the risk of being completely trounced by someone who's just smashing those public objectives. They're only ever going to get a maximum of 4 points more than you for achieving the same objective. Obviously, if they achieve the objective and you don't, that's going to be a full potential of 7 points for them if they're the first to complete it. But yeah, I just like the fact that everyone can complete it, and it's not a game-breaking way of winning if you go solely for those public objectives. So it's a nice little touch, and I think they're very well balanced. So yeah, I have to, of course, bring up about the box insert in this. As I mentioned earlier, I am a fan of functional box inserts. I like maximizing and organizing my space within the box. And what I love even more are box inserts that can make setup and teardown easier. And that's exactly what the box insert in Tower Up does. I like the fact that I can tear down the game in less than a minute. I can set up the game in less than a minute. It's really, really good. Very well designed. Other publishers, please take note. The game itself states it's good for players 10 and up with an estimated playtime of around 45 minutes, and I must agree with that statement. The game moves at a nice speedy pace as buildings start going up and spaces rapidly decline, pushing the game towards its end. The end game trigger, of course, is if you can't physically place a building on a ground space, that will trigger the end of the game. And of course, if you put your last roof onto a building, that will also trigger the end of a game. So guys, there you have it. Tower Up, a game about building buildings that doesn't take too long and leaves me with the realization that if I were in charge of a real life city rejuvenation, we'd all be living in parking lots. Thank you guys very much for joining me here today for another video review. If you did like the video, please do help us out here by giving the video a lovely like. You can share it to all of your good friends. You can comment as well below. But of course, the most important one, if you don't want to miss any future content from us here, is of course subscribe to the channel. And of course, we will then get to see you on the next one. But until then, I have been Jason. You have been watching The Meeple Minded. Join us next time for more tabletop gaming goodness. Ta-ta and goodbye.